doing? You've broken HOA rules! You're going to be fine! Move out of here right now!
We're stuck. I'll gun it. Okay, hit it! Hold on! Damn it, one more time.
It was the kind of winter that made the mountains look like they belonged in a postcard, untouched, white silent. Yet behind the beauty, the roads twisted like icy serpents, ready to trap anyone foolish enough to underestimate them. I had lived here for years, at the base of a narrow canyon road that led into town. One road in, one road out. During winters, that road became a lifeline, a fragile thread connecting life to safety. For years, I cleared it myself. Before the HOA existed, before the new residents arrived with their complaints and their sense of entitlement, it had been understood. Residents took care of the road. It was grueling work, cold, exhausting, yet necessary. No one asked for payment, no one offered thanks. I did it because someone had to, because if the ambulance couldn't get through when someone was choking or dying of a heart attack, or worse, there would be consequences no one could ignore. Then came the HOA, Homeowners Association. They prided themselves on control, on rules, on order, and I was about to find out exactly how much control they wanted. I remember the morning the ticket appeared as if it had been dropped from the sky. Taped to my front door, bright orange and almost mocking against the white snow, with violation 14-C, unauthorized tire damage to common property. Fine, $430. At first, I laughed. Tire damage? The tracks barely left a mark. But as I read the note again, my laugh died in my throat. The HOA wasn't interested in truth, in safety, or in fairness. They were interested in control. I stepped outside, breath visible in the frigid air, and looked at the road. The fresh snow covered every inch, the wind whipping it into small drifts. The tire tracks the HOA claimed were damaging the road were from my old plow. They were shallow, light, insignificant. Yet they had seen them, noted them, and sent a fine. That simple act was enough to ignite a chain of events that would shake the community and test my patience and skills in ways I hadn't imagined. I poured myself a cup of coffee, dark and strong, and sat by the window. My gaze drifted over the frozen landscape, the long white ribbon of road twisting down the canyon. I had been a state fraud investigator before moving here, tracking embezzlers, uncovering corruption, seeing the worst of human greed. Now here, in a seemingly peaceful mountain town, I saw a new kind of threat taking shape. A subtle, insidious one that hid behind bylaws and fines, behind polite emails and careful wording. The snow continued to fall. By mid-morning, it had already piled over a foot deep. I hadn't touched the plow yet. I wanted to see what would happen if I did nothing, if I simply let the natural world take over. By noon, the first calls came in. Mrs. Henderson, a pregnant woman, asking if the road would be cleared for her prenatal appointment. Mr. Davis, whose mother relied on oxygen and had no way out. I told him honestly that I was standing down, that I would not act until the HOA's interference was resolved. Emails and alerts from the HOA arrived in my inbox like clockwork. Reminders, threats, warnings. Due to unauthorized snow removal causing surface disruption, community plowing will resume when weather stabilizes. Please refrain from interfering. Safety is our priority. Safety, a word meant to hide their greed, their desire to control every action, every inch of the road. I watched, I documented, and I waited. Cameras were everywhere. HOA installed, blinking red lights on every corner, recording movement and activity. They wanted proof, perhaps hoping to catch someone misbehaving. But what they didn't know was that I was ready, not with plows or shovels, but with experience, evidence, and patience. By the third day, the situation escalated. The contracted plow service, finally sent by the HOA, attempted to access the road. Within 100 feet, it was stuck, tires spinning, metal scraping, the vehicle helpless against the 6 feet of snow that had piled up. Emails went out to the community, delays due to extreme weather. Authorities were supposedly ensuring safety. But I knew the truth. They were leaving the road impassable intentionally, waiting for residents to panic, waiting for me to break the rules. And then the first real emergency hit. Mrs. Davis's mother, 83, coughing violently, struggling to breathe, trapped in her home. The ambulance couldn't reach her. I knew the HOA charter contained a clause. In genuine emergencies, residents could act if official contractors were delayed. That clause, buried in legalese, was my green light. I prepared my plow, checking every chain, every blade. But first, I gathered evidence. Drone footage showing untouched snow, photos of my plowing history, copies of the fine, email correspondence, and public budget reports showing discrepancies. I sent these documents to all residents. You have rights. You are being misled. That night, snow continued to fall, thick and relentless. The wind screamed through the canyon like a living thing. My mind raced as I watched lights flicker in neighboring homes. The roads were death traps, yet I felt a strange calm. This was no longer about tire tracks. It was about exposing the system, protecting lives, and making sure the HOA couldn't get away with their control games. By day 5, I had begun mapping every action of the HOA president, Cheryl, and her cousin Todd. Midnight meetings, suspicious deliveries, invoices that didn't add up. Every document, every receipt, every email began to tell a story of greed and corruption hidden behind bylaws and neighborhood etiquette. I traced shell companies, contracts with impossible terms, payments that vanished in a thin air. The snow was relentless. 6 feet at the canyon's peak, drifting against fences, windows, and doors. I could feel tension mounting in the neighborhood. People were scared, trapped, angry, desperate, and I was the only one who could act. As a single ambulance siren screamed through the frozen night. Somewhere, someone was in danger. I gripped my plow's controls, knowing that what I did next could make the difference between life and death. And I thought, this isn't about tire tracks anymore. This is about justice. The morning sun barely penetrated the dense cloud cover that had settled over the canyon. Snowdrifts towered against every fence, every gate, almost swallowing the lower windows of the houses. It was beautiful from a distance, serene and untouched. Up close, it was deadly. Streets vanished under 6 feet of frozen white, twisting into impossible labyrinths where one wrong step could spell disaster. I stepped outside, boots crunching into the fresh layer of snow, and surveyed the chaos. Tires had been useless, plows had been stuck, and for 3 days the HOA had done nothing except send threatening emails. Every vehicle that tried to move ended up spinning helplessly, engines screaming, chains flying off. Yet there they were, Cheryl, the HOA president, pacing her driveway in a pristine parka, phone pressed to her ear, issuing orders that no one could possibly follow. I had come to a decision. Waiting any longer wasn't an option. Lives were at stake. I couldn't let bureaucracy or petty vindictiveness dictate who survived the winter. I started my plow, engine roaring through the quiet of the canyon. Snow sprayed like powdered sugar into the air, and my headlights cut through the whiteness like twin swords. I followed the mapped routes I had prepared, avoiding unstable slopes and snowdrifts that could collapse at any moment. It was during the 3rd house I was clearing that the first real confrontation occurred. Cheryl herself appeared, standing in the road, arms crossed, face red from the cold. "You can't do this," she shouted, teeth chattering. "You have no authority. This is HOA property." "I have authority to save lives," I replied, my voice echoing in the canyon. "The HOA will not stop me." Her eyes flashed with anger. "I'm calling 911. I'll report you for trespassing and vandalism." I didn't wait. The first emergency was already visible, lights flashing faintly in the snow. An elderly man's house, smoke curling from the chimney. He relied on oxygen, and the tanks outside were covered in snow. Every minute counted. I maneuvered the plow past Cheryl, careful not to harm anyone, and headed down the slope, adrenaline pumping. The narrow road twisted dangerously. Snowbanks on either side threatened to trap me, the weight of the machine making every turn a calculated risk. Visibility was minimal. The storm had thickened, a whiteout obscuring everything beyond 10 feet. I could hear Cheryl's voice still yelling, muffled through the wind and engine roar, but it didn't matter. Lives were more important than petty arguments. When I reached the man's house, the scene was tense. He was standing at the door, coughing violently, oxygen mask barely in place. His wife was trying to support him, panic in her eyes. I didn't waste time. With practiced precision, I cleared a safe path for the ambulance that would arrive eventually, giving them access to the road. Every moment felt like a countdown. One slip, one collapse, and we could all be buried. Then, a new challenge appeared. Across the street, a neighbor, a woman pregnant with her first child, was attempting to dig her car out. She hadn't realized the snow had hardened into layers of ice underneath. She slipped, and her scream pierced the frozen air. I ran to her, helping her stabilize, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on me. One wrong move could injure her, or worse. The storm was relentless, the danger omnipresent. By midday, the HOA was in full panic mode. Emails flooded inboxes. Residents must cease unauthorized plowing. Safety hazard imminent. Violation notices pending. But the storm had already shown who truly controlled the road. Not bylaws, not fines, not meetings, but preparedness, skill, and a willingness to act when others hesitated. I knew Cheryl was not going to stop. That evening, a new development arrived. Anonymous threats slipped under doors, messages hinting that my actions were being watched, and that retaliation would follow. I realized the fight was no longer just about snow or roads. It was personal. They wanted to intimidate me, to show that the HOA's reach extended beyond bylaws and fines. Night fell early in the canyon. Headlights and street lamps were swallowed by snow drifts. The silence broken only by the occasional groan of a trapped vehicle or the distant howl of the wind. I reviewed my notes, checking every call, every emergency response, every plowing route. Then came the first serious accident. A tree branch, heavy with ice, collapsed across the road, narrowly missing a car trapped halfway down the street. It blocked the only exit, leaving a dozen residents isolated, panic setting in. I grabbed my snow chains, preparing for a climb on foot to assess the damage. Visibility was near zero, each step a risk of slipping or stepping into a hidden drift. I could hear voices calling for help, the faint glow of flashlights bobbing through the storm. Every resident's face that I saw was etched with fear and frustration. The HOA had failed them. The storm had made them realize that bureaucracy and fines were useless when survival was at stake. Hours passed. Exhaustion set in. I knew I couldn't rest. Not yet. Every step, every cleared path, every moment of vigilance was a tiny victory, a lifeline for those trapped by snow, bureaucracy, and fear. Yet, despite my efforts, Cheryl wasn't done. That night, I noticed a shadow moving near my property, someone attempting to sabotage the plow. I confronted them, but in the darkness, they vanished into the storm, leaving only footprints and a sense of threat that lingered. By the early hours of the morning, snow had stopped, but the canyon was still trapped in ice and drift. Residents were safe for now, but the battle lines had been drawn. The HOA had tried to control lives through petty fines, through fear, and through manipulation. They had underestimated the consequences of their arrogance. As I sat inside, drying off, reviewing footage from my cameras and drones, a chilling thought crossed my mind. This was far from over. Cheryl and her supporters were already planning their next move, and I had no doubt it would be calculated, ruthless, and aimed directly at me. And then, just as I was about to set the cameras for the night, my phone buzzed. A new alert. This one wasn't from the HOA. It was from the sheriff's department. A call had come in about a missing child, last seen near the edge of the canyon. Snow-covered roads, dangerous terrain, disappearing footprints. And as I stared at the alert, a sense of dread washed over me. The real storm wasn't over. The storm was just beginning. The sun had barely risen, but the canyon was already quiet, eerily silent after the storm. Snow lay thick on every surface, glittering in the pale morning light. Streets were treacherous. One wrong step could send a vehicle sliding into the icy ravines. I tightened my jacket, checking the plow one last time. Every tool, every chain, every ounce of preparation mattered. Then the alert came. A child was missing. Last seen near the canyon edge, footprints trailing into a frozen slope. Panic set in immediately. I grabbed my thermal flashlight and radio, calling for backup, but the roads were still partially blocked. Every second mattered. Cheryl, the HOA president, had disappeared from public view after the storm. But I sensed her presence everywhere. Emails, whispers, and now, subtle sabotage. She wanted control, no matter the cost. I didn't have time to wonder what her next move would be. The child needed to be found. I followed the faint tracks, crunching through deep snow. The wind had picked up again, howling through the canyon like a living thing. My breath came in visible clouds, my heartbeat pounding as I scanned the white expanse. Then I saw it. A small scarf caught on a branch, bright red against the snow. My stomach sank. The child had gone off the trail. Stay calm, I whispered to myself, voice barely audible. We can't afford mistakes. The slope ahead was steep, icy, and unstable. One misstep could send me sliding into the ravine, but turning back wasn't an option. Carefully, I edged forward, plow at the ready in case I needed to clear a path for rescuers. Every step was measured, every branch avoided. Then I heard it, a faint whimper, carried faintly by the wind. Help me. The sound drew me forward like a magnet. Snow clung to every branch, frost coating my eyelashes, but I ignored it all. Then, between two jagged rocks, I saw a small figure huddled, shaking, covered in snow. Relief and fear collided. I moved faster, kneeling beside the child. It's okay. You're safe now, I said, voice steady, heart racing. The child's eyes were wide with terror, lips blue from cold. I wrapped them in my jacket, checking for injuries. Behind me, a shadow moved. Cheryl appeared, impossibly fast despite the snow. I told you this would get out of control, she shouted, her voice cracking with fury. You think you can undermine the HOA and control everything? You're reckless. I stood, shielding the child. This isn't about the HOA. It's about people. You can't endanger lives and pretend it's rules enforcement. Her face twisted, a mix of rage and fear. Then she lunged, not at me, but at the child, as if trying to claim control even here. Reflexes honed from years of crisis kicked in. I grabbed her arm, twisted, holding her back while keeping the child safe. Step away, I barked, voice echoing against the canyon walls. For a moment, she froze, eyes darting, calculating. Then she stormed off, disappearing into the snow, leaving a trail of boot prints that quickly vanished in the wind. I exhaled, turning to the child. We need to get you home, I said. Slowly, carefully, I retraced our steps, snow crunching underfoot. The roads were still perilous, but I had learned to navigate them with precision. Every turn, every incline, every risk was calculated. Back at the child's house, the parents were waiting, panic etched on their faces. When they saw the child, their relief was palpable. Tears fell, hugs were exchanged, but there was no time to rest. The canyon was still trapped, snowdrifts dangerous, and the HOA's influence lingered like a shadow over every property. That night, as I monitored the cameras and drones, a chilling thought settled over me. Cheryl was still out there. She hadn't given up. Her reach, her vindictiveness, her obsession with control, these were far from over. But neither was my determination. The residents had seen who truly protected them, who acted when rules failed, when danger came knocking. And somewhere in the dark, between shadows and snow, I knew a new challenge was coming. A storm of a different kind, the kind that couldn't be cleared with a plow, chains, or sheer grit. For now, we were safe. But safety in the canyon was fragile, fleeting. And as I watched the snow fall outside, glittering under the moonlight, I realized this was just the beginning of a battle that would test courage, resilience, and the very limits of authority.